welcome to our series. Today we have another wonderful guest with us. We have had a couple of sessions and we have got great love and attention from all of you. So, thank you everyone for watching the YouTube sessions or attending this live. So today we have Supriya with us, and we are going to have an amazing conversation. And this is going to be a little different because she is also an entrepreneur. So we are going to discuss around that as well. So, Supriya, why don't you take it away, introduce yourself, introduce coding and more to our audience?
Thank you so much, Supreet, for having me here today. I am so excited to share my journey. I'm Supriya Bhualka. I'm an AI educator and the founder of Coding and More. Besides that, I'm also a mum of two kids, one of whom inspired me to start this journey. And before I say something else, for me, Coding and More stands for two things: impact education and women empowerment. Two things very close to my heart because I enjoyed my learning as a child. And having gone to a girls' school with a little bit of a co ed school and then back to a women's college, it was one of my deepest desires to, have a platform for women where they can find their space. So, yeah, that's me.
Awesome, awesome. So you said that the AI, the interest in AI was, from your kids. So just tell us about that, right? How did you get intrigued by this? How did you get in AI? Was it your education? Was it your family? Like, what was it about?
So my education was actually in math and econ. I did my bachelor's from the US, from a women's college, Wellesley, in math and
Mm.
econ. And then I went on the trading floor for derivative trading in Wall Street for a very small stint because at that time, women from India didn't really go abroad to study. They were not really allowed to work, so to say. So I had to come back, got married and took a sabbatical from the workforce, but I always kept myself in tune by volunteering in my son's school, for study abroad counseling, for math, for enrichment, wherever they needed help, I was in touch. And then I got a opportunity to start a franchise of a Japanese company which teaches math and English. And it was a personalized program. And what really intrigued me was it wasn't a teaching program, but a self learning program. And while I was doing that, and I have a young daughter, and this was around 2015-16, that suddenly coding was available for younger children. Earlier when we thought about programming, it was only for high school kids and then college and postgrad. But now, there were platforms which were age appropriate and which were gamified for the young children. And I started looking for something for my daughter, and either I found that the curriculum was not robust, or I was not convinced by the teachers. And I was like, you know what, this is applied math, coding is nothing but applied math,
Yeah.
so maybe I should just figure it out and teach her because it's just logic. But then I had the imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't think I know enough, right? So I was doing intensive research, and my daughter was my guinea pig. And then, we piloted on a couple more kids. And in that research, because I constantly needed validation, I stumbled into the AI curriculum. And that I found fascinating because AI is so relatable, right?
Yeah.
You're using it in your daily life. Suddenly, all these technologies started making sense to me. And this curriculum that I found was for the K-12, students. It was for young children, and that's how I started.
Awesome. Awesome. So you said that, so when you say that the AI curriculum, so I'm assuming it was more on the math and the coding aspect of things, correct?
No, no, that was the beauty of it. So actually, this was a big moment for me when I. Are you there, Supreet? Yeah, you got
Okay. Okay.
frozen for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Actually, I got myself into a mailing list of the professors from MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and all these top universities where they talk about, the AI research for the K-12 students. So it wasn't actually math based or, very heavy on programming. They were talking more about, the ethics of AI. They have
Oh,
something
wow.
called the five big ideas.
Yeah.
So what is AI, what is machine learning, the different kinds of learning, and of course the coding is there, but the emphasis was not so much on the coding, but on actually building the AI models. And then there was another really nice platform that I found from IBM. It's not actually from IBM, but it's a professor. He's a gentleman from IBM who does it again, as a hobby, called machine learning for kids. And it was really neat because he had built a platform which is web based, where children can actually collect data in the form of text, sound, pictures, faces, train it in a scaffolded environment, and then take it to scratch and code it. So
Yeah.
suddenly you had this opportunity to teach children that, look, you're interacting with this technology. It's not magic. This is
Yeah.
how it works. This is how it gives you those predictions and those results,
Okay.
and this is how you use it, and this is how you think about you know what other use cases would be for it. So the math doesn't come in really, because it's scaffolded. And that's the beauty of it, because when they start, you start on open field, right? It's
Yeah.
like you don't need to worry that I don't have the coding behind it, I don't know the math behind it. You learn it along the way.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and I think that's very essential because not only for kids, but even for people who might have studied math and eco, and especially I'm the same. I studied math and I wanted to pivot in the field of AI, and it's almost you have that barrier in your mind that, oh my God, I'm not a coder. How will I pivot into this field? So I think that kind of this startup and these ideas, if you inculcate in a child's mind from childhood, it's very important, and they'll know, okay, this is also a career that I can take, and I can pivot in this. So that's great. So
But
so tell us more.
uh,
Sorry, sure, add.
sorry,
Yeah.
but you actually said the key word that we are the barrier.
Yes, that
All
is
the
true.
barriers are in our mind. It's not
Yeah.
out there. It's in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I think you also touched upon two important things. I also want to talk about the imposter syndrome, but before that, let's talk about coding and more, right? So tell us, how's your journey been? What were the challenges and everything? We want to know everything about it.
So, when you talk about the challenges, with coding and more, there are two parts to it. One
Yeah.
part is as an entrepreneur, which is universal for all entrepreneurs. And the
Yes.
second part is related to the tech part, because it's a new domain for me, which was not from my area of expertise. So, coming to the entrepreneurial journey, I think the hardest thing for an entrepreneur is to start.
Yeah.
Because we keep thinking that I need to get all of this perfected, I have to have this fabulous business plan and everything in place before I start. Not true. You get 80% right and start. You set a date and say, I'm going to do it on this date no matter what. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did. And you just start and you learn along the way, because if you keep waiting to get everything right, ain't happening. So I figure that, I've already passed half my life, waiting to start. So I just have to go ahead and think of it as my MBA that I'm going to do, learning on the move.
Yeah.
So that was one big challenge that I learned to overcome. The other big learning that I had is that every obstacle or challenge that comes your way is a lesson to be learned. So
Yeah.
don't look at it in a negative way, but look at it as if this is a lesson that if I overcome, I have grown a little bit more. So
Yeah.
bring it on, I mean, just bring it on and let me be a
Yeah.
better version of myself every day. Let my company be a better version of itself. And let's take everybody along.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was the second thing. Third, I was very clear that, in this work of mine, because, in my franchise, we were limited to the franchise rules. Everybody had to work a certain number of hours. And it was like a 9 to 7 or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
here, I think teaching should be joyful, learning should be joyful.
Yeah.
uh, so I wanted a happy environment, and I really really wanted other people like me, because I saw so many women like me, who wanted to work but couldn't, because either they were holding themselves back, or because of a lack of opportunity or whatever. And then I wanted them in because I felt that they would be an asset to me. So that was another challenge for me, to convince really smart, empathetic women that, listen, you can do it. If I can, you can,
Yeah.
right? Uh, but that's been a great journey also, because, when I mentored my first cohort, I saw that the second cohort got naturally mentored by my first cohort without me even planning for it. It was
Hmm.
incredible. So that's on the sort of entrepreneurial journey, the challenges. As far as the tech part goes, which was very sort of uh, pivoted towards my AI journey, the first thing that I really struggled with was, am I doing the right thing? Do I know enough? I don't want to be, playing with children's education.
Yeah.
I, I went to the extent that, I was sending my son off to college in the US. And I sat there and I used to go to the computer science, department and ask the professors, I listen, this is the curriculum I'm following. Is this right? I mean, I was crazy. My son said, Mama, please go home. Everybody will know you over here. But I mean, I needed that validation.
Yeah.
I realized, so actually, a really cool thing happened. We started in our first batch in August 2020. In
Mm-hmm.
October, there was the first World AI competition, not the first online AI competition for youth. And because we were one of the first AI educators in the world,
Yeah.
maybe a handful of us, um, they asked me, do you want any of your children to participate? I said, they've only had 8 hours of AI. How can they participate? They said, what, send in a thing. And I sent it. Three of my girls won a third prize
Oh, wow.
in 8 hours. I was like, okay, we are certainly doing something right over here,
Yeah.
So that was a big motivation for us. And I think the biggest challenge, Supreet will be very surprised to hear, is that though we have a world class curriculum, though we know that our teachers are really amazing, the community is not yet ready for AI education. People do not understand the difference between coding, robotics, and AI.
Yeah.
They just intermingle the three. Number two, they don't really have a realistic learning outcome
Mm.
in mind. They
Yeah.
feel, oh my god, if I do this, I'm going to get that. And it's a lot of it is also because of the other edtech companies and the kind of FOMO marketing that they've done, which is really sad, because I think education is like medicine where you should be ethical.
Yeah.
uh, so again, when I realized that, I first thought that it was my marketing that was wrong, right? And I wasn't even marketing. I'm bootstrapped and we were sort of just doing awareness. But then I realized that, this is something that I need to do, create
Yeah.
more authentic awareness of AI literacy, because it's important. It's a dynamic technology which is not static, right?
Yeah.
Every time you interact with it, it's
Yeah.
representing the world to in a different way. So that's been one of our biggest challenges, that I think our communities are not ready, but we're here for the long haul, so we'll get
Yeah.
there bit
Yeah,
by
no,
bit.
no, definitely. Yeah, I think what you're doing by, educating, and obviously this video is going to go out, and the more people you reach, the more they'll know that something like this exists. And honestly, I didn't know before I stumbled on your profile through Women in AI. So, it's amazing. And so tell us more about what is your target audience? Is it just the K-12 students?
Yeah, so it's just all the K-12 students, and we start really young,
Mm,
and again, we realize that for AI, 7.5, 8 years is the
mm.
right age to start, because
Okay.
they have the maturity to understand, ethics of AI comes naturally to them. Fairness is a no-brainer. They're like, of
Oh,
course we
wow.
have to be fair. Of course,
Mhm.
we have to be
Yeah.
inclusive and, diversity and transparency. Young children are naturally untarnished.
Yeah.
Two, I believe that AI is for all. It is not just a technology field. There
Yeah.
are pathways that one takes. Either you become a specialist, and then, of course, you learn the math and the coding and everything, and you become a data scientist, or whichever way you would like to be. But AI is going to be used in every single field. It's already being used every
Yeah.
field. So you'll be an AI practitioner.
Yeah.
So I believe AI is for all. Two, because uh, again, I believe that it's important to have more women in technology. Another thing I learned from my experience is that when children start young, they don't build those mindsets and those stereotypes,
Yeah.
and then they continue because they feel they can do it and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that's another plus of starting really young. And I want to stick to the K-12 because I think there is enough out there for the high school. We are also targeting the high schools, so like for the undergrad. For the undergrad and professionals, there's a lot out there already. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so it's basically kids who are 7 years to 10 years, I'm assuming.
No, to 16. So we go from
16,
8
7
to
to
16.
16.
Yeah.
Okay, 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 7 to 16. Wow, that's like, I think, a great age gap. So, how are your programs? So, are your programs like different for each age group? Like, how do you cater? Because a 16-year-old will, know a little bit more than a 7-year-old, and so on.
Right. Yeah. So, we have differentiated a program according to the grade bands. Of course, at 13 years plus, we do ask them to, learn Python. We teach them Python, or if they have
Okay.
to learn our language. For the 8 to the 12-year bracket, it's a similar program, but it's again differentiated according to the grades. And the other thing that we did is that we customize each class. So what that means is that when our teachers are taking a batch of children, we don't take more than 4 children in a batch. The teacher is empowered to be able to customize a class according to the cohort, because we don't want the children just to learn the technology but also to be able to apply it to their interest. So if you're a child who likes music, they'll make projects with AI with music. If a child is into sports, AI with sports. you know we want them to learn it in an inclusive way, not in isolation. And all of this is possible because you have these amazing professors
Yeah.
in the Western world who are willing to share. None of
Yeah.
this would have been possible if we didn't keep up to date with all the technology and research that
Yeah.
is coming out of these academic institutions, and they're
Yeah.
so happy to share. That's the amazing part. You don't have to be a somebody to
Yeah.
reach out. You just have
Yeah.
to ask.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's where also the power of networking and power of reaching out, comes into play. Are these courses self-paced, like online courses?
No, they're all live.
They're all live. Okay.
Yeah, we decided to go the live route because we thought that a there's a lack of awareness. B, AI is not a very simple subject to be taught. You have to be very pragmatic and have a bird's eye view to
Yeah.
be able to see the grays. So it's important to have a person there who sort of talks you through and gives you the diverse point of view, right? You need to hear the diversity from the different kids, their opinions,
Yeah.
because there's not one right answer always.
Yeah. So how do you think, in your experience, you might have interacted with so many kids, how do they balance their, homework and their lives, and then this additional classes, I would say?
You know, uh, A, we have made our classes really fun. We at
Mm.
least try to do that. It's not just about being educational, but we want
Yeah.
our kids to have fun. We want them to be excited. We want them to be curious that after the class is done, they actually look around and say, how is the AI in this working? How
Yeah.
could it be better, right?
Yeah.
So, 1 hour a week, I don't think is much. We don't ask parents to do more than that. And we
Okay.
don't give homework unless the child asks for it. I
Okay.
mean, I think it's a little building block that you start to build the
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And in your experience, like, how many years does like a student stick to, complete the entire AI journey with you?
Supreet, we started 2 years ago. We
Yeah.
started with one module of 10 hours. We have
Okay.
gone up to 100 hours, and it's
Okay.
just growing. Because there's so much happening. The beauty about AI is that there's so much happening. When you start reading, you go down a rabbit hole. There's
Yeah.
so much to learn. So far, what we have found interestingly is because when we started, it was during lockdown. So
Oh.
that time, people didn't have an option but to be at home.
Yeah.
So they started the classes. Once the lockdown was open and people sort of wanted to go out, so we found a little bit of turmoil in the market because people rather be outdoor than indoors. But now it's settling in. Uh, we find that a large percentage, compared to other edtech companies, that almost 70 to 80% children, re-enroll in the next module, which
Wow.
is, I mean, I'm very grateful about, and I hope that we can continue to keep doing the right things
Yeah.
so that we are fair to the children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's essential. So yeah, that's actually intriguing, I feel like, because 70 to 80% like do want to continue in AI, and hopefully they'll be the one who will be the data scientists and AI practitioners, for the future. So I feel like that's really important. That's so yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a great startup and a great idea. So yeah,
It's very fulfilling, but
yeah,
I think we have a long way to go,
yeah,
to just ensure that, people come in with realistic expectations, because,
yeah,
these are still young children, and
yeah,
we're teaching things, so that they are not outdated by the time they grow up.
yeah, exactly. So if anyone wants to enroll in this, like you have a website, or how do they go about it?
So we have a website, but I have to say my website is a little stagnant. But the
Mhm.
way we have reached out to children is through schools as an after-school program.
Yeah,
And what we have found is that when we have a partner school and children enroll with us, then they tell their cousins or friends,
yeah.
and they sort of reach out to us and we get them started.
Okay, okay, okay. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to, kind of indulge with different students and of different backgrounds and everything. So so what is the demographics of people like? Like, is it only from India, or are they even enrolling from US, and how's that going?
So primarily, they are from India. But what we found is that when people have family and friends, we have a small amount, a small percentage from the UAE, from Africa, from Hong
Oh,
Kong,
wow.
which work in our time zone. We
Yeah,
got very few children from Canada and USA. PST timings are really hard for us,
yeah.
unless. I start recruiting, teachers from the US, because I don't want my teachers to be awake at night. That was something that I wanted, that everybody is a happy person, and not
Yeah,
doing work.
yeah. Okay, so you said that your teachers are from US or are not?
Not currently.
Okay,
But
okay.
the plan is that, when we come to, in a big way to the US, we would like to, encourage more women from the US to apply to be an
Oh, wow.
educator with us.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So I think that's another thing for our audience, because I know, a lot of folks who are interested in teaching, and they are always finding the next teaching opportunity, and it's good for us also, right? Like, especially the part in this field, to kind of think from that perspective. It's easy to explain someone who already knows stuff, but it's hard to explain someone from scratch and in their language, right? So that's definitely a learning curve for everyone, I would say.
Right. Yeah, so in fact, a lot of our educators who are, for the 13 plus grade band, they are data scientists, who
Yeah,
are working in industry or who are learning, and they find it very, very fulfilling for themselves, because they realize that when they are teaching this AI to younger children, they have to really understand the concept well, to be able to speak it in language and to give analogies that younger children can understand. And
yeah.
the other interesting thing that, some of my teachers told me was that I didn't really understand this until I saw your curriculum.
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
were like, I wish somebody had taught it to us this way.
Yeah.
So,
That's yeah, that's interesting. And I would honestly say that I think that's why I said that there would be a learning curve for all the people, who are going to teach all of these concepts, because some of the AI topics, might seem simple to us because we have been applying them day in and day out. But when you try to explain it to even senior leadership, right, you have to
yeah.
kind of think in a way, okay, what is the value that we can add in their lives, and how do we explain that? So yeah, that's why, yeah, that's important, and it's an important skill for all the budding data scientists as well. And I talk about it a lot, is the power of storytelling, and this is again another way of, storytelling. So we have 5 minutes left, so I would like to spend some time, on imposter syndrome. And I know you mentioned about that, and that's something which is very common amongst anyone who's doing something non-traditional and stepping out of their comfort zone. So, like, just any tips and tricks, and how did your imposter syndrome look like, and how did you overcome it, or if you're still overcoming it, how you're doing it?
So, I didn't know I had the imposter syndrome until I had it. And
Yeah,
I think I read about it or heard somebody say it, and I was like, so it's something that exists and it's not just something that I have. And I think that the best way that I found to overcome it is by validation. We are
mm,
so fortunate, Supri, that today any knowledge that we need is out there. All
yeah,
you need is determination and grit, right?
yeah,
And the
yeah,
imposter syndrome comes. purely by the fact that you feel that you're not adequate enough. So you
Yeah.
need to validate that. And two, if you're still not sure, I think that we are very fortunate. I know that both of us are part of the Women in AI.
Yeah.
There's so many wonderful communities out here who are willing to help. So just
Yeah.
ask. And I think that what holds people back sometimes is this fear of being judged.
Hmm.
But for what joy? Be authentic. It's fine. Ask. It's better to ask and get the right answer than to be foolish and not know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, again, I think these are again some practical tips, right? As you said, like start maybe with validation and then, try to overcome that. But also, can you discuss like how, I know you mentioned briefly how did the imposter syndrome look like for you, but I think it's important to kind of describe it, right? What questions do you ask yourself when you're suffering from imposter syndrome?
am I good enough? I mean, am I on the right path? Am I doing
Yeah.
the right thing? Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Right? Is there something that I've just missed, which is so obvious, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and this fear that the other person knows more than you.
Yeah.
This you don't realize what you are, and especially I think a lot of people are very humble. They
Yeah.
don't want to put themselves out there,
Yeah.
and there are the others who have the gift of the gab, and
Yeah.
they will speak more than they have, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's just an internal confidence that you get, because you have to, as long as you know you've done your work, as long as you
Exactly.
know that your intent is right, and that
Hmm.
you're doing everything in your power to be able to cover all your bases.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's very important. So one last question I would ask before we end is, I know you're an entrepreneur, you're a mother of two, and obviously you're engaged with other organizations as well. Personally, a lot of people ask me, okay, how do you juggle, right? So what are your tips for people who are trying to multitask and be everywhere?
This is something which is work in progress for me, but I can tell you one thing: do what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's one life.
Yeah.
Every day that goes by is gone. So do what makes you happy. you know I make sure now, because during COVID, I realized that, it was work from home. There was no start and end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when you enjoy what you do, you just keep at it.
Yeah.
But then I learned that that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So you actually prioritize, and you say that, it's important for me to spend some time for myself, my health, you know, my parents, my friends, whoever matters, and you carve out that time. Put it on your to-do list. It may sound very cheesy, but put it on your list. Like, I have it
Yeah.
on my list. Talk to my mother. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I
then
know.
do it. You take those things for granted.
Yeah.
So if you're
Exactly.
mindful about it, you will get there. It's
Yeah.
always going to be work in progress, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you touched upon the right point, which is prioritization, right? You don't have to do everything at the same time. It's almost about balancing it out, and seeing, okay, what is important at this point of time, so that you don't get crazy with the amount of work that we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
So
don't
that's
feel guilty, right? You don't want to have any regrets that, oh my God, I didn't do this.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's another concept these days that's coming in, which is JOMO, joy of missing out, instead of FOMO. So I think we need to embrace that more and
yeah,
leave FOMO behind.
absolutely.
So that
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
it's
concept.
not something I suffered from, honestly. That's one thing I'm happy I never suffered from.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think maybe in the West we do. I mean, at least I do. So, so that's great. So, is there any last piece of advice, Supriya, you would want to give before we sign off?
I think that the only thing I would say is, whatever you want to do it. Because there is no obstacle in your mind, or in your way, but your own personal mental block.
Yeah,
So, if you decide that this is something that I would like to do, but you don't know even where to begin, just start.
yeah,
Make a wish and figure out how to do it, and
yeah,
find people to help you.
yeah.
I genuinely believe that there is no excuse today for anyone not to be able to achieve something, because everything is out there. You just have to go find it. It just requires determination
Determination, power of networking, reaching out to people, again, getting out of your comfort zone, I think.
and being positive and just being positive about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
You know,
exactly. Exactly. So great. This was a great conversation. Thank you, everyone. And I know if people are watching, if you have any questions later on, please feel free to reach out to Supriya. I think she's quite active on LinkedIn. And we'll take it from there. Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Supreet.